Quite a few important news coming from all over the world today. They are from China, America, Mexico, Turkey. But one particular news overshadows everything else, and it comes from Uzbekistan. Howdy, howdy, friends. My name is Konstantin. Welcome to Inside Russia, where usual Russia is explained by the unusual Russian. Every Wednesday, I give you my takes on important world news, how they are seen from Russia. It's Wednesday today, so let's talk about the news. Before I start, I'd like to ask you a favor. Hit the like button right now. It's like an advance like button. If you don't like what you're gonna hear, you can always unlike. So give it a shot. Give me a like. Let's start with China today. I have pretty interesting news. And it does not come from a media source, from a newspaper, TV channel, not from internet. It just came today from a very good friend of mine who is traveling in China right now. That guy is Russian, and he's a travel blogger, and quite a few of you know him. He's a very good friend of mine. We even did live streams together. And videos too. He sent me a few pictures today from China and the news. And I quote my friend, "Today they refused to change dollars to yuan because I have a Russian passport. I was in China recently, and there was not such a problem in the past, but now even the Bank of China does not exchange currency due to I am Russian. There's a feeling that soon they will even hit you in the face when you show your Russian passport." Well, this news, again, it does not come from internet or the news agencies. It comes from a real person who I value highly and I trust. I guess so much to China being Russia's ally and friend. And that's proof of that. And by the way, Russian propaganda in the last few weeks kind of dropped this message, oh, China is our friend, China will save us, out of their agenda, and they've kind of forgotten about it. And that's a clear indication for me that something with China is definitely not going right. And there you go. We have a proof from a real person. Let's continue with Mexico. Let me do something important here. I hope this helps. Let's continue with Mexico. Now, I'm going to be quoting NBC News. It caught my eye. NBC News reports that Russia is using Mexico as a base for spying on the United States of America. According to the report, Russian intelligence agencies have increased their presence in Mexico tremendously over the last years. That is a return to Cold War tactics. And the U.S. intelligence officials, well, they clearly understand that. Russian presence in Mexico is with the goal to conduct spying operations against the United States. And this is, well, I believe that. The report mentions one of the intelligence agents, or former intelligence agents, who is in the know. Russia has increased its staff at the Russian embassy in Mexico City over the past few years. And although Moscow has limited trade relations with Mexico, this increase in personnel is very concerning. The US officials fear that it could be used for intelligence operations against the United States and propaganda. And I think they have pretty darn good reasons to say that. In a conversation with NBC News, a U.S. official said that the Biden administration has already raised the issue with the Mexican government regarding Russia's increased presence in Mexico. The official stated that Russia has made a significant investments in Mexico in order to expand its presence there. Earlier, William Burns, the CIA director, said that the USA is closely monitoring the expansion of Russian presence in America's southern neighbor. Well, folks, what can I say? I believe U.S. intelligence agencies. I believe this information. I believe that Russia is up to something not good in Mexico. The last time when I did not believe the U.S. intelligence was when I didn't believe that Russia was going to invade Ukraine, and it did, according pretty much to what the USA said. Ever since, I decided that I'm not going to be a disbeliever anymore. Those guys are usually right. So Russia is up to something there in Mexico. Sad, because they're spoiling it for us, regular people. Many Russians go to Mexico, try to get permanent residency, citizenship, and quite a few try to move to the United States. Some legally, some illegally, Well, I don't really, approve those who try to get to the USA legally, but I personally know Russians who obtained Mexican permanent residency, and they're happy. Mexico is a great country. It's too bad that the Russian government is reaching into Mexico now. And now, the news from Turkey: Russian schools have started to close en masse in Turkey. Since September, the beginning of September, 4 large institutions have been closed in Antalya alone. A fine of 1.6 million liras, that's about $50,000, have been imposed to every school, the owners of such school. The local authorities of Turkey's main resort province are taking tough measures against illegal educational institutions organized by Russians. Now, let me explain you what this is all about. In September of 2022, millions of Russians fled Russia. There weren't too many choices where to go, and Turkey definitely was one of the choices, a good one too. Russian citizens can travel to Turkey visa-free, and it was relatively easy to obtain permanent residency and even citizenship of Turkey by investing into real estate. So there are hundreds of thousands of Russian nationals reside in Turkey, one way or another. And families moved there. And, families with children need to be educated. Not everyone likes to be educated in Turkish. Not everyone likes local schools, so they decided to organize their own schools. And some of them were organized, well, not according to the rules, let's put it this way. And such schools are being closed down. According to Turkish law enforcement officers, these illegal schools functioned under the guise of various educational centers, dance studios, and even therapeutic institutions, some kind of like medical clinics, that they could comply with the standards of Russian Ministry of Education, because they had to be registered in Russia. Well, Turkey's been tightening its grip not only on Russians, but on all foreigners. The country's economy is not in the great shape. I'm putting it very mildly. And this trend of tightening all regulations for foreigners has been going on for quite some time. And by the way, this is the very same thing that is happening in Russia now, the fight against migrant workers. And at this point, many Russians have started leaving Turkey. Okay, the next news comes from France. Telegram creator Pavel Durov is still under arrest in France for all kinds of imaginary charges, but there is a light at the end of the tunnel for him personally. Not for us, Telegram users that have relied on Telegram as a secured way of communication, no. But for Durov, definitely yes. Durov started cooperating with the French authorities, and I guess he started cooperating with the Russian authorities as well. Telegram users recently received a confidentiality agreement update. A tiny little update that changes everything in a big way. I also received it. Telegram personally sent it to me. Let me quote a part of the message that concerns the confidentiality agreement. The IP addresses and phone numbers of those who violate our rules may be transferred to the appropriate authorities in response to reasonable legal requests, unquote. So, Telegram will disclose my IP address and telephone number and any other information for that matter to the KGB if that information will be requested by the KGB. And the French did this. They forced Durov. They arrested him. Okay, they most likely blackmailed him. They forced him to change the policies of Telegram in the way that it's open to everyone, including the KGB. Do you know how it feels to me, personally? Do I know how I feel? Enraging. It feels enraging. And the next news is also on par with the previous one, and it comes from an American company called Apple. Apple Corporation has removed 98 VPN services from the Russian App Store. Internet is being very aggressively blocked in Russia, and VPN services help to bypass the blocking. Almost 60 VPNs have disappeared in the last 2.5 months from the App Store in Russia. You know why it's important? Because those VPNs who make it to App Store, and it doesn't matter if it's Russian or not, they are secure. They are guaranteed to help people, and they do not pose any threats. So the data came from about this disappearance, came from the project called the Great Fire that monitors internet censorship. It also says that more than 20% of VPN services were blocked without public notifications. According to the analysts, that cannot be explained by voluntarily departure of the developers who all of a sudden decided to leave App Store. You know, that doesn't happen. They don't leave all of them at the same time. Because it happened on a certain date or on a certain dates, and it happened en masse, okay? Many VPNs at the same time. And that definitely indicates that these actions were coordinated, well, actually done by Apple itself. I quote Benjamin Ismail, the director of an app censorship program. Unilaterally restricting access to these important tools without transparency makes Apple complicit to ensuring Russian government censorship. I personally feel like I'm stuck between a rock and a hard place. Russian government is after me. Oh, it hates when I, go live and speak up as I tell the truth about Russia, what's happening in Russia, and I give facts. They follow me physically, they call me, they write me, they threaten me. And now Telegram and Apple join the prosecution. They start playing on the Russian side. It's hard to believe. They want to make my life as miserable as possible. They also want to make it just same as the Russian government. Telegram will gladly give my personal information to the KGB now at their first request. Amazingly enough, enforced by the French government who did this. And Apple forbids to use the safe VPNs by deleting those that will work in Russia from the App Store, because Russian government, requesting to delete those VPNs who actually work in Russia, and they leave those that don't work, okay? And you know what? Google jumps in too. It has demonetized me, and I have failed to get any reasonable answer from them. It looks like Google also isn't feeling too great about me speaking the truth about Russia. And just to put cherry on top of the cake, I am not allowed to go to any Western country as a Russian citizen. They gladly accept the criminals, the top architects of Putin's Russia, whose families sometimes live in the USA and in Europe, but they reject me and 3 million of other Russians just like me who have said no to the war and to totalitarianism in Russia. Never in my scariest nightmare, I thought I'd find myself in a situation like that. The only support I have is from my family, and I'm eternally grateful for that. My fellow refugee friends that I have made here in Tashkent, and you. And thank you so very much, the Inside Russia community and the viewers. Thank you for all your messages, letters, words of encouragement, prayers. Thank you for the money. Thank you for coffees at buymeacoffee.com, for becoming patrons, for transfers on PayPal. Thank you for your love. You are literally keeping me alive where everyone else is trying to sink me or kill me, or, Thank you, thank you, thank you so much. The next news is from Russia. Oh, not really Russia. Russia-Georgian border. Place between Russia and Georgia. You see, exports of Porsche, Land Rover, Range Rover, Mercedes, and other luxury cars from the European Union and the UK to Russia fell to zero after Russia invaded Ukraine. All companies, Western companies, they have simply exited Russia, and they banned sales of their automobiles there, official sales. But the ban imposed by the sanctions has been circumvented, and no one is hiding it. There recently was a Sky News investigation conducted, and it all started with a photo that Sky News economic editor Ed Conway received from a colleague of his from Georgia, from the border checkpoint on the border with Russia. There are so many luxury cars in unofficial parking lots, which are usually only seen near hotels in Mayfair, near Hyde Park in London, or in places like Dubai or Beverly Hills. There were Mercedeses, luxury Lexuses, BMWs, and a large number of other German cars, multiple Range Rovers, and other expensive cars, according to Conway. Together with his colleagues, he decided to visit that place. He visited the Georgian border, where him and his colleagues identified a complex but well-established system of transporting European cars to Russia. Well, here go the sanctions, the Western international sanctions for you. All Russians seem equal for the Western, countries, for the West. But some Russians seem more equal than others. You sanction some and be very strict to them, and for others, you continue trading with them. You continue welcoming them with your arms wide open. Yeah, because they're a little more equal than other Russians. You know what? I can't even imagine how Ukrainians are feeling. Before I jump to the next news, I'd like to remind you that every single day I carefully select 9 news from Russia that I find important and make them available to patrons of Inside Russia. So if you want to know everything to stay updated on everything current going on in Russia, but you don't know where to look for information, you know now. So become a patron of Inside Russia at Patreon, and you'll get access to awesome news. I'm pretty proud of the selection that I make every day with help of my family. Well, let's jump to the next news. Comes from the Polish Foreign Ministry, and that's a very unusual news. Let me just share it with you. The Polish Foreign Ministry has proposed transferring Crimea under a UN mandate and holding a new referendum, giving people a choice to say where they want to live, in Russia or in Ukraine. According to the Polish Foreign Minister, Radoslaw Sikorski, in order to achieve peace in Ukraine, it is necessary to transfer Crimea under the supervision of the United Nations. He believes that the peninsula will play a crucial role in the negotiations between Moscow and Kyiv. But it is unlikely that the parties will be able to reach an agreement on this issue, and he's absolutely right. However, with the willingness of both Russia and Ukraine to find a resolution, it may be possible. As Sikorsky stated, we could transfer Crimea to the United Nations under a mandate to prepare for a fair referendum after determining who are legal residents and, taking similar actions. We could delay it for 20 years. The Polish foreign minister also expressed the opinion that the West, and in particular the United States, made a big mistake by telling Kyiv not to fight in Crimea in 2014. I quote, "If Ukrainians had fought in Crimea, even symbolically, Vladimir Putin perhaps would not have decided to invade Donbass." I end quote. This, in my eyes, is huge. This is the first time I hear an alternative position on Crimea from the West. Before, it was firm. Crimea is Ukraine. It belongs to Ukraine. And under any circumstances, Crimea must be returned to Ukraine. And that's a sound position. You can't argue with that. But the Polish foreign minister is absolutely right. That's really hard to achieve, because Russians will be hanging on to Crimea until the very, very, very end, what is important for me is that I hear an alternative opinion from a Western politician. Poland is a major player in the political scene in the world, and it's an ally of the United States. Okay, and it's interesting. It's a very interesting development. I don't know whether this will be achieved or not, but what it tells me is that everyone is looking for a way out of this war. And I feel that the big negotiations are up in the air and they're close.